So it's so great to have you here today. And I'm really excited about running a session on a series on a complete spectrum of meditation, a complete meditation spectrum. Because people teach all the component parts of this, but very few people teach the whole series, all these different things. And I myself, in my own meditation practice, have got my spiritual meditation as well as my psychological meditation. So it's great to share that with you. And for me, it's breaking new ground because there are some circles in which I go to which are spiritual and do spiritual meditation. And there are some circles I go to where the meditation is more psychological. So it's really great to combine it in a single session. And in fact, some of the best practitioners actually don't make a differentiation between some aspects of spiritual and some aspects of psychological. But I'm doing that just for the sake of clarity. So it's great to have you here today. So as you probably know from the handout, from the invitation, we're going to focus on awareness practice today, non-dual awareness practice. I'll talk more about that in a moment, which is essentially, it starts with Vipassana. And that'll be what we pay attention today. Next week, we'll talk about, you could call it relational meditation and prayer. You could call it dualistic, but that's quite a judgmental word. But when there's a separation between you and higher power, or you and an archetypal force. So it can be really useful to pray to a higher power, but that's not non-dual, is it? You're separate from the higher power. And we'll talk about those differences during the course of these weeks together. Sometimes it's great to seek to enter the non-dual, where everything is one and that you and source are one. And other times it's really useful to imagine that you're separate from source so that you can pray to source and source can give you advice. And then in psychological meditation, we of course can include other archetypal forms such as characters from picture books or stories, mentors that we have, famous people. We can include all sorts of other resources. And also the purpose of psychological meditation is slightly different, is different to spiritual meditation. Then on the 8th of December, we'll spend time on practicing all three types in a single sitting, which is what I do most days as a daily practice. And of course, you can actually do this. Once you've practiced this, you can do the whole thing in a few minutes, or you can spend, several hours doing it. There's a whole range of possibilities in terms of focusing on these three practices, or these three types of practice. And then the final session is on doing it quick, doing a short and sweet version of these three practices. It's not really, I say three practices, it's three types of practice, because particularly the relational meditation practice, where you're praying to a higher power and receiving blessings from a higher power, the archetypal forms can come from any tradition. So that's what's so beautiful about it. You'll find across all the traditions that people pray to higher power. And so whichever tradition you're in, all these different traditions have different names for their contemplation or meditation practices, but the structure is similar. So then you can apply it to anyone you want. Sometimes in China, when I'm doing a guided meditation, I talk about praying to Lao Tzu, praying to the Buddha, and then I say praying to Mao Zedong. You could pray to Mao Zedong if you wanted to. So you can pray to any form that takes your fancy. And I think in this time, being able to pray to Mother Earth, being able to pray to the cosmos, to being able to pray to however the Big Bang happened, to pray to scientific visions of it all, to just pray to the immensity of it all is a beautiful thing that we can do. And so what do I mean by pray? I think of it as being rather like the SETI project, the search for extraterrestrial life. Somewhere in California, they have all these big telescopes sending out some pulse out into the universe, hoping that some far distant civilization will reply. So I sort of send out from my heart, requests and messages to the universe without necessarily having a very clear form about who is going to respond to those messages. But there's a sort of a very beautiful way in which one can put out requests to the universe. And so, of course, the universe could, you could think of it as being outside yourself, or higher power. You could think of it as being the collective unconscious. I'm not really so bothered by what we think of it as long as what we feel about it is interesting and evocative to us. So if there's a wise higher power, they really won't mind the shape in which we approach. So that's my feeling about it all. That feeling of aspiration, of request, whether it's the unconscious which is listening, which of course the unconscious is listening, whether it's the collective consciousness of humanity, the community of minds, or whether it's a little old man on a cloud in a white nightie. William Blake, the English painter, he painted God in a white nightie sitting on a cloud, which I always think, if I was sitting on a cloud, I probably wouldn't want to wear a white nightie, So there are all the different cultural forms that one has, and it doesn't really matter as long as it works for you. A beautiful example of this was somebody on one of our courses, my courses at the moment, has a really direct sort of connection with a saint. She actually had some sort of mystical experience visiting the shrine of a saint, a Christian saint. But then the other day in some meditation, she suddenly got the Tara, the Buddhist image of Tara. And I love the fact that she can connect through more than one tradition. Of course, it's sufficient to connect through more than one tradition. So the first week is about practice that is beyond any tradition. It's the Vipassana practice, where even the word Vipassana, you may have noticed that I spelt it differently to the way that Thich Nhat Hanh spells it, because there's a slight feeling sometimes with Vipassana courses that there's a way of doing it. It's like a bit of a brand, isn't it? Whereas actually the spelling I used was the Tibetan spelling, because actually all the Buddhist traditions have awareness practice. And so does Christianity, and so does Islam, and so does Judaism, and so do the native traditions of indigenous peoples. This awareness practice happens in all traditions. So that's all traditions are no traditions at all. I mean, mindfulness is an attempt to, a very good attempt to bring awareness practice without any cultural or religious connotations. So that's the first week, something that's really beyond theology, beyond structure. And in fact, it's quite interesting if you read, one of the Christian mystics who wrote a book called The Cloud of Unknowing, but he's anonymous, so we don't know who he was. He was a monk. But when you read that, it could have been written by a Buddhist master. The language goes beyond any particular theology when you really get to the non-dual awareness practice level. And that's why great teachers of different traditions love each other, meet each other, hang out with each other, because they know they're leaning into the same thing. So the first week is really beyond tradition. The second week, but you can use your own tradition if you have one. You can, if there's an archetypal form, a great figure, a great being that touches your heart, you can use that. And so that really provides a lot of variety and flexibility for us to just follow our hearts. And then in the third week, we'll say, actually, how do we use this for psychological healing? And what are some other tools that are used in meditation for psychological healing? And then in the fourth week, we'll do all three together, because all three together are a nice daily practice. And then in the fifth week, we'll do, I call it short and sweet, but I could have called it sort of down and dirty, or, whatever. There are lots of things that one could call it. So that's really what we're going to do during the course of this time together. And the structure of each week is that I will guide the meditation. I will lead us in a meditation. and then we'll do a bit of debriefing in small groups, and then we'll come back and share and ask questions in the large group. So before I go any further, any questions about what I've said so far? Questions, particularly. Any questions about what I've said so far? And it's great, folks, if you can turn your cameras on. It's one of the rules that I have. It's not a hard and fast rule, but if possible, I like to have cameras on because I like to feel intimate and connected, as if we were face to face with each other. So it's great, Christina, that you finally managed to get your laptop working. I know it's difficult. Technology can be difficult sometimes. Any questions? You can either just unmute and speak, or you can put your hand up if you want to be polite. Great. Hi, Sean. Great to see you. It looks like there aren't any questions at this point, so I'm fine with that. So I'm just beginning to feel in myself, in my body, awareness practice happening. And so I'm beginning to feel that I'm getting really present with you. I can feel my body, I can see your images. I'm not having to pay much attention to talking at this point, because when I first start, I'm a bit involved in trying to describe it. But now I'm just more in the flow. And so awareness practice takes place very, very naturally. Essentially, most people can see, most people can hear, most people can feel, most people can smell, and most people can taste. And by paying attention to the senses, something miraculous starts to happen, which is that if you pay more attention to your senses, you will have less attention left for your internal dialogue, for your inner chatter, because there's only 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of information can be held in attention at any one time. So attention is limited, it's focused. And so the more I'm paying attention to my body or my sight or the sounds, the less I have for internal dialogue, and the less I have to think about all the worries of the past. My mother didn't love me, and now I'm trying to be a successful person, and one day I'll prove to my father that I'm the man he wanted me to be, or whatever it is, or whatever's going on, in your daily struggle, whatever your daily struggles are. And I'm not, as I get into the present moment, I'm stop thinking about the future, worried about paying the bills, or what I'm doing this evening, or something that's happened next. So the struggle of life is about trying to recover from whatever it is that happened in the past, or get back to something that happened in the past, or trying to make something happen in the future. And we're sort of caught between the past and the future, trying to change something from the past into something better in the future. And that's not, this isn't bad, but we can do too much of it. It's an addictive process. So internal dialogue is one of the things that makes thinking, conceptualization, recent addition to the brain, is one of the things that makes us great as a species. It's a wonderful thing that we have. But we've overused it, and with immense consequences. For example, we feel separate from nature when we're not. We are nature. There's the dividing into categories, the analyzing, the standing back and observing that consciousness does is a great thing, and it's also our biggest problem as well. So there's nothing wrong with any of it. The only problem is if we're addicted to any part of it. I mean, I suppose if you could say, let's meditate on the body, but if all you could do was ever feel what was in your toes, that might be too much feeling of your toes. It's, we want to be balanced. So we can include everything in our awareness. So just that is interesting, that I can feel my body. You can feel your body. You can hear my voice. You may hear other things in your surrounding, in your house. You can see the camera. You can see the laptop with this amazing images of all these people around the world. You know, if you check your mouth, you can taste. My sense of smell is quite bad, but you know, sometimes I can smell. So that in itself is amazing, isn't it? That we have all these senses. And just to mention this, one of the problems of our society is that for various reasons I won't go into, you know, when we discovered rational, as we in the cultural history of discovering rational thinking, it went too far. You know, and you know, the worst being Descartes saying, "I think, therefore I am." You know, that thinking is what means that I exist. It's much more I am and I think. I mean, and in fact, I was listening to some, you know, a neuroscientist talking about Descartes the other day, and you know, Descartes was verging on mad. You know, his philosophical view was that, you know, those people outside my window could be automatons, they could be robots, for all I know. You know, from a philosophical point of view, you know, it's an interesting question. But if you live like that, it's called psychotic, I think. You know, so we went to an extreme. We got out of balance, and so we're coming back to the fundamentals when we say I have consciousness, I see, I hear, I feel, I taste, I smell. And as I start to pay attention to the whole, there's something beautiful that happens, which is that I'm less worried about what happened this morning or what happened before I came, and I'm less worried about the future because my attention is here in this ever-changing moment. By the way, we include internal dialogue is one of the things you hear. So it's fine, welcome the internal dialogue, your inner voice, but it's not you. There are many things you hear. There are many things you feel. It's only one part of your experience. You know, welcome thinking, but it's only one part of your experience. And so then you're starting to observe all of this. Just sitting here observing consciousness. The most valuable thing that any of us have, you know, the emperor, the king, is consciousness. And yet, how much training have you had in consciousness? All of our education is about the products of consciousness. So I can see the screen. If I defocus my eyes a little bit, if I just soften my eyes, I can see the screen, see someone's face on the screen, but I can also see in my peripheral vision other things in the room. And then I can include my ears as well. Listen for all the different sounds. And then I can include my body. So what's happening in your body right now? People have little tics, little things they do they're hardly aware of. I notice that one finger is just scratching, comforting the other finger. Paying attention to the big muscles in the body. Paying attention to the skin. What you want to do is to find portions of your immediate experience that are interesting. You know, is there tension in your shoulders? Which foot is touching the floor more fully than the other foot? If you listen to the inner voice, there's a secret, there's a tip with the inner voice, which is, it's easy, because it's sort of in our head, or for most people it's in your head, it feels like it's you. But actually, if you listen to my voice, and you listen perhaps to the sound of your computer, and you listen to sounds in the house, that voice in your head is only one of the things you experience. And if it's only one of the things you experience, it's not you. It's one of the things you experience. So just getting a little distance from it, not sitting in the middle of the thought, but being amused and curious, like meeting someone at a party. They're interesting, they babble away, they do their thing, and you can be interested, compassionate, and listen from a distance. And as you listen to that voice, it may tell you something about what's going on for that strange person called you. And so having compassion, but just not being it fully, standing back from it, so that you've also got the other things you see. You've also got the other things you hear. And you've also got what you feel. And because it's so easy to be over-involved in thinking, it's good to keep taking your attention back to the other portions of your experience. Your toes, muscles, skin, and emotion. And some of you are so addicted, I can see the commentary going on. You're listening to me and you're talking to yourself about what I'm saying. It's actually visible if you're trained to look at this thing. So it's like, watch your own commentary. As soon as you watch it, as soon as you observe it, then you're coming more back to awareness itself. And then awareness itself has these two components. The first is that you've got attention jumping around. Attention watching paying attention to different things in the present moment, different senses. So just notice how that jumps around. And it's good that it jumps around. I'm paying attention to my feet. Now I'm back to sound. Now I'm noticing what I see. What's happening with my breathing. One beautiful meditation practice is just to pay attention to the fine detail of breathing, of a single in-breath and out-breath. So that's attention. Just notice how attention keeps moving around between different parts of your experience. And then, can you step back from attention and notice the field in which awareness arises? This is a little bit more difficult. So, where is the place that all seeing arrives? Everything you see arrives in your brain. Where is the place that all the sounds arrive in your brain? Where is the place that receives feelings? I don't quite know how to explain this, but if you pay attention to each sense, it's the place where all of the senses arrive. For me, the best metaphor is that of a mirror. Everything you're experiencing, seeing, hearing, and feeling is reflections in the mirror. But there's something stable and consistent about the place that all of that arrives. The mirror itself doesn't change, but what you think about, what you feel, what you see, what you hear changes moment by moment. And thinking about it isn't really the answer. You're not going to get this by thinking about this. So if you are being Descartesian and trying to understand this, it's not going to do it. This is beyond cognitive understanding. The process of cognitive understanding will take you away from the direct experience. Did you know that from a neuroscience point of view, the cognitive understanding part of our brain doesn't experience reality at all? It takes information from the right hemisphere. It's the right hemisphere that experiences reality. The cognitive brain, the cognitive understanding, the left brain, makes maps of the experiences. So it's not going to help thinking this through. So what you want to do is keep taking yourself back directly to experience. And just do this in a light way. Be curious, be interested. Everything is okay. If your mind is jabbering, that's interesting. If you're really paying attention to your breathing, or you have a feeling of emotional upset, that's interesting. If you don't like my voice, that's interesting. Just be curious and interested with whatever's happening to you, moment by moment. Let's take a thought. So, where do thoughts come from? See if you can catch a thought as it comes out of nowhere. See if you can find where the thought comes from. Sort of watch it arising or listen to it arising. Try and catch the thought before it's fully formed. That place where the thought seems to come out of emptiness or nowhere is really an interesting place. So thoughts arise from somewhere or nowhere. Then they hang around for a while. And then if you ride on the thought, then you can follow the thought for an hour. Some really interesting fantasy. But if you observe the thought, it won't stay for long. It moves on. It floats away like a cloud. So there's nothing wrong with following a thought, except we already spend a large portion of our lives doing that. So here we're just wanting to see the thought arise, watch it stay a while, notice that it disappears. Just notice everything that's happening to you right now, whether you're peaceful or whether you're disturbed in some way, whether you're disturbed with thoughts or a difficult emotion or physical thing. Just notice it. Just notice what's happening. Everything that's happening is perfect. It's the unfolding of consciousness. You've got consciousness or awareness itself, and then there's all the weather systems. So consciousness is like the sky. Awareness is like the sky. And you've got clouds and rain and thunder and mist and all the stuff that goes through it. But it never changes the sky itself. So just be really interested in what is arising in awareness for you right now. And none of it's wrong. Welcome it all. And welcome every feeling. Consciousness, as Rumi says, is like an empty guest house. And then all these different guests come in. Some are peaceful, some are happy, some are sad, some are raging, some are painful. They come, they stay, they go. Welcome every guest. Just keep paying attention to what arises. Just be curious. And if you've got sort of some obsessive thoughts that you don't want, don't push them away. Welcome them. Be curious. Be patient. Be interested. Patience is the first thing that we learn with meditation. So be curious, be interested, but not completely involved in it all. Watch the sky, not the weather system. there are some things that really support this process. To feel into your body, to notice particularly what's happening from your chest down. So as you breathe, breathing is a really useful tool here. So you might start with how the hairs in your nose move as you breathe in. And then the feeling of the air in your throat, really paying attention to the fine detail. And then how your chest expands and your rib cage opens as you breathe in. And then how far down does that breathing go into your belly? Because what's great is that this is a really interesting place to really check out the fine detail of a process that's normally out of awareness. So it's great to bring attention here. And also, we can be aware of any emotional feelings we have in our heart, in our solar plexus, behind the navel, in the lower belly. And again, we welcome. You're not trying to change anything. You're just saying, I see you, I hear you, I feel you. I see you, I hear you, I feel you. And the more you just welcome your experience, the more settled you'll become. The more at peace with yourself you can become. So you're not trying to get anywhere. You're not trying to make anything happen. You're just welcoming your experience in this moment that will change as the moments go by, all of their own accord. So, I think this is a reasonable amount of time to do this. So when you're ready, just begin to reorientate to the room, to the screen, to each other. Stay deeply connected if you can, and also out with your eyes open. One of the founders of NLP, John Grinder, used to talk about, he called it downtime states, which were like, hypnotic, very internal states, and uptime states, which are with your eyes open, connecting out and in at the same time. So I think it's really useful to be able to, in fact, in my tradition, we meditate with our eyes open, because we consider the world to be a construction of inner reality anyway, or our interpretation of the world, what we make it mean. If I look at someone on the screen, I make interpretations about gender and age and all sorts of things that happen unconsciously. We're interpreting the world all the time. I look at a name and I think I might know where the person comes from, for example. So what I want to do now is to take us into groups of 3 and a group of 4, and just share what your experience was. So in the group of 3, you'll get 7 minutes per person. I will do the timing for the groups of 3. And in the group of 4, it'd be great if somebody does the timing there. You'll only have 5 minutes per person. And the question is, what was that like for you? And just be honest about what it was like for you, and be interested in what it was like for the other people in your group. The reason for doing this in groups is so that you can hear about other people's experiences doing this. So the rooms, so how was this for you? And so the way to do this, for people who haven't, let me explain this, for people who haven't been with me before. So one person talks for 7 minutes in the groups of 3 and 5 minutes per head per person in the group of 4. The other 2 listen very attentively. Don't go off and make a cup of tea if you're not talking. It's really important that you see, hear and feel, that you give your attention to the person who's talking. Also, don't give advice. Don't tell them to do it differently. Don't show them what an expert you are, and don't sell your training program or your course to them. You're listening. You can use reflective listening. So you can say, oh, so it was like this, 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 and this. You can use their words to repeat back to them what they've said. Or you can simply say, the simplest thing to encourage them with is, tell me more. Tell me more. So there's no advice or anything of that sort. Tell me more. The person, if you're the third person in a group and one person is talking, but one of the other listeners is giving advice, interfering, telling them that it should be different or anything of that sort, the third person is there to, is just to say, hang on for a second, that's not the instructions that Julian gave. So if someone's being a little bit too, sort of expert or trying to, give advice, the third person should just say, hang on, that's not the instructions. Great, so you've got, 21 minutes in total, starting now. The rooms are open now. So, and if you turn your cameras on when, those of you who aren't ready, what was your experience of the meditation, and what questions do you have? And you don't have to ask a question because nobody else is asking a question. Sometimes it's good to sit in silence. Occasionally you get someone who makes up a bad question because they're trying to save me from the emptiness of no one asking questions or making comments or sharing. So I'm happy to sit in silence, and then you'll find that somebody's got something they want to share or somebody's got a question they want to ask. So there's no hurry. Oh, great. So first Georgiana and then Marina. These are the 2 of the usual suspects, actually.
I was trying not to. That's
I don't know, suspect being the usual word.
Go on.
Yeah, I was very glad. Thanks, Judy. I really enjoyed that. That was. I was quite struck by the fact I didn't quite know that you'd actually started, and I was very aware that I wasn't sort of in it, because you didn't. Previously, you said, okay, let's begin, as it were. And I like the way you just drew us in. And suddenly I found myself, oh, here I am.
And Georgiane's quite an experienced meditator. She's been meditating since, 1970 or something like that.
Well, yes and no, but actually what I was going to share was an experience I had doing a sort of, I was on a Dzogchen retreat, a sort of formless meditation retreat with your eyes open. And I was finding it really, really difficult. And I started doing loving kindness meditation. And then I thought, of course, I said, what are you doing loving kindness meditation? You're supposed to be doing Dzogchen meditation. Why are you doing that?
What's the question?
Well, it was an experience. I found myself beating myself up because I was doing loving kindness meditation.
Right.
And I thought, hang on, something's really wrong here. But it's a bit of feedback. What I really like is that you often bring up Rumi's The Guest House and the whole welcoming of any, so if I look back, that's such a vivid experience for me, beating myself up.
Yeah.
Because did that. And if I just, welcomed it, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm doing loving kindness, whereas it didn't ruin the retreat, but it stuck me in this.
Yeah. So let me address this point, Georgianne. So when you start meditation practice, it's great to have a structure, and so the Buddha said there were 84,000 different types of meditation. What he meant was that that there's an unlimited, a very, very large number of types of meditation. But you start with a structure process because that's a great way to be a beginner. But as you can hear from Georgianne's story, there comes a point at which that actually the structures fall away because really, so there's the structure of a meditation process, but actually what you're paying to is the naturally arising consciousness, awareness that naturally arises and has forms, and that in itself it's a healing power, and that actually what we're learning to do over time is to take refuge in awareness itself, to really trust awareness itself, and that whatever arises in awareness is what's needed at the time. It is the king, it is source. Awareness itself is source. And so therefore, people have, we should be doing this sort of meditation, but actually the true deep meditation is simply to be with what arises. And so in Zen Buddhism, they will say the path only goes part of the way, or sorry, the path doesn't go all the way. So we need the structures to start with, but in the end, we've had a direct experience of awareness, and we don't really need the structures anymore. So that's one of the reasons why I took us into the meditation just very, very informally, because actually awareness is there all the time. I was pointing out what was there all the time, what is there all the time. And of course, it's great to sit down and say, now I'm going to meditate. Now, because most of the time, unless you're an advanced meditator, you've got your thinking, your habitual thinking processes happening all the time. So it's great to say, let me give a little bit of time where I won't follow the thought, where I won't identify with the thought. Let me stay back and watch it all. But once you get experienced with watching it all, the ultimate meditation is when you're walking around in a state of meditation all the time. There's I don't know who it was, but there was some Buddhist teacher who had lots of students. He was quite young, and an old monk was quite jealous of the fact that he had all these students. And he said, he shouted from the back of the room, well, so tell me, how much time do you spend meditating per day? And the teacher says, I never meditate. And the monk says, what? You never meditate? And the teacher says, but when am I ever distracted? So that's sort of the ultimate, when because it's the natural state, and that's what happens in the end to great teachers, that they've identified with awareness rather than with the thinking process, and so thinking is something that arises in awareness, but they're not identified with that. But for us mortals, for us ordinary humans, it's great to have practice. But the purpose of meditation practice is to learn to be in that mindful state more of the time, because as you do the meditation practice, suddenly life is a lot easier. I'm not worrying about the past. I'm not worried about the future. I'm not worrying about anything. I might feel something in the present moment, my toothache or something. But if I'm close even to my toothache, it'll be less painful than if I'm thinking I shouldn't be having it. I used to meditate. I was at the dentist, and I'd meditate at the dentist, and the dentist got quite annoyed with me because he said, I can't tell whether I've given you too much anesthetic because I'd be in this deep state, and then I'd start snoring. I think that was the problem when I started snoring. So yeah, that's really great. So whatever is around. Sorry, Paul, we're going to go to Marina next, and
yes,
then
of course,
come afterwards if you want to.
Yeah.
Just that sort of key point that really meditation is paying attention to what is and including all of what is, rather than trying to make it different to what it is that you're experiencing in the moment. Marina.
Yeah, I was going to try and link in with what you just said. And I was also listening to Eckhart Tolle this morning, who was talking about exactly what you were saying about the busyness and then the being in the now. So I totally get it. The question I've got is doing that exercise, and I know this because it's a pattern that's come up recently.
Yeah.
You know that thing about welcoming, welcome, welcome, that one.
Yes.
You go, oh, I'm welcoming sadness, right?
Yes.
That's been around quite a bit at the moment. And I know what it's about, and I don't need, and I'm trying to do things to manage that. I think the question is when I say welcome sadness, it's almost going, look, you need to do something about this. My sadness is saying that it's there for a reason. And I can go into just accepting it's there and acknowledging there's so much more going on within me, the physical, what I hear, what I see, what I feel. But there's a part of me that's going, well, you can't ignore this. And practically I'm not actually. So I think it's just this balance between when you're welcoming it, is it that you're just then integrating that with everything else that's going on? And I know that thing about you can hold it and it might dissipate, but I know my sadness wants something.
Yeah, let me comment on that. So this is a really good introduction. Marina's example is a great introduction to the difference between spiritual meditation and psychological meditation, because particularly the awareness practice. So the awareness. Okay, you could say there are three different forms of meditation. Awareness practice is just accepting what is. And so that's the sort of really the ultimate, that's the portal through to the non-dual. We can talk more about that. So that's awareness practice. If you like, relational meditation, where you imagine a higher power and you pray to the higher power, is a sort of, you could pray to higher power, please heal this in my life. So you're asking for something, you're asking for a blessing. Psychological meditation says, oh, there's a part of me that's grieving, that's hurting. There's something that it wants, it's longing for something. And, my commitment today or tomorrow or this week is to do something to fulfill that longing. There's a request. So that's a cycle. So there are these three different types of meditation. So, in fact, a part of what I call the quick and dirty, short and sweet, quick and dirty meditation practice is just to say, it's really a psychological meditation, but we can make it more than that. But to say, what's my woundedness today? Feel that. What's the longing that my woundedness has? And then what's my commitment or my intention today to do something about it? So if I'm feeling lonely, great from an awareness practice point of view, just sit with the feeling. It's a feeling that's arising, sit with the feeling. From a relational, relating to some deity or archetypal form, I'll say, I'm feeling lonely today, please help me meet someone lovely. Please empower me or support me in having a great day, or please bring someone into my life, or, whatever. And then the psychological meditation would be, oh, this is the feeling of loneliness, which I accept, and I love myself, and I bring my heart to myself. I bring my warm, tender heart to that place in my body. I bring my adult mind to that place. And also I make a commitment from my adult mind. Let me make a phone call, call a friend, go on a dating website, or whatever it happens to be, whatever the action is. So so meditation, that's why there are these three different sorts of meditation. They have different purposes, but what do they all have in common? They all involve body-mind connection more than just the cognitive mind. And actually awareness, another difference is that particularly awareness practice, when you really, really get present, then there will be just moments when thinking stops. And when thinking stops, you are the universe. So awareness is a sort of practice. It can take a while. It's a portal through to this just experiencing yourself as the universe. And so then the relational one is, I'm separate from God, but maybe I can get a bit of feeling of that God's in my body as well. So God's everywhere, God's out there, but also God's in my body. There's a more sort of working with the relationship with, God, Buddha, Source, cosmos, whatever your saint, archetypal form, Padmasambhava, whatever your archetypal representation is. But then the third form, which is more psychological, is it's particularly bringing your wise adult mind, your warm, tender heart, plus your resources, which we'll come to, which is everyone who's ever believed in you, every person who's ever seen you and said yes. And that, of course, can include archetypal forms. And it includes Mother Nature. And it can include collective mind, the wisdom of humanity. To bring all of that to support an emotional place in myself. So there are these three different sorts. And I've given you a bit of an overview of all three. I don't expect you to get them all right now. But today we're focusing on just noticing. The purpose of awareness practice is to welcome whatever arises in consciousness, and to be surfing the wave of consciousness. So that forms are arising, forms are staying, and forms are going, and you're surfing the present moment. And then that leads into being in peace with yourself, and then also discovering that the present moment leads somewhere. The conscious mind that makes stuff happen, it's very useful in our society. But actually, when you're surfing awareness, you will suddenly get up and make a cup of tea. You will go and eat some food. You will take action. It's not as if you're just paying attention to the present moment, things don't arise. I think I'm getting a bit complicated here, actually.
No, it's really helpful. Thank you.
Great. Sure. Great. Thank you, Marina. That was really a great question. I'm just going to, Paul, do you still have a question or a comment?
No, it was a comment. It was the word stillness came to mind, literally, because it's stillness of the body, which is a kind of preparation for a stillness of the mind.
Can I comment on that?
Yes, please.
Because actually, I was going to tell you this at some point, but I'll tell you all now. So we've got these, I think it's 5 Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Until, let me just tell you the date. Until whatever it is, the 14th or something like that of December. I haven't quite got all the dates in front of me. There's actually one more Wednesday before Christmas. And I'm going to shuffle all of these back because next week, I'm going to move the program back a little bit because next week I want to do Awareness Practice Part 2, following on from today, because I want to pay attention to embodied awareness, to particularly pay attention to the embodied part. And that, even though you say, you're talking about stillness, for lots of meditators, sitting still is the way to do it. And that's the tradition I come from. But actually, Tai Chi Chuan and other embodied practices are really great ways of getting present, and yoga and other things. And also, those of you who've been involved in generative change or creative mind will know that, and the neuroscience supports this as well, that really having an embodied practice is really helpful. And so sometimes, actually, next week we'll do some stuff about if we just really make small movements in the body, that's a great way to bring our attention into the present moment. And one of the benefits of that is that it's quite easy. Some meditators have something that's called spiritual bypass, which is that I'm watching awareness, I'm watching awareness. I haven't got, the feelings are just arising, you know. And so they're sort of in they're in a sort of high level awareness with thoughts maybe, but they're not really including the emotions of the body. And so, so there are meditators who you're very hard to have a relationship with because everything's one, everything's at peace. I'm never angry, I'm never sad, I'm never happy, I'm never erotic, I'm never, juicy. So it's actually really important to, we do have in case you haven't noticed, you have a body. And the body's not to be denied. The body is the vehicle for consciousness. And some of those traditions which have separated, I am spirit, I don't have a body. Well, let me stand on your foot. Once somebody said everything's an illusion. I was a bit younger and more, I'm still quite cocky, but I was younger and more cocky. Someone was saying, yeah, it's all an illusion, blah, blah, blah. And so I gave him a big kick on the leg. He didn't like it at all. I said, that's an illusion, isn't it? It's like we have physical bodies. We need to. So that's something that I'm going to do is next week I'm just going to change the program slightly, make it 1 week longer and do embodied awareness, because actually we'll come back to that when we do psychological meditation. What's happening in the body needs to be included and not just observed from a distance. So thank you for that, Paul. Genrica, where have you gone? I can't see you on the screen now.
You can't see me?
Oh, I can see you now. Great. Your picture moved on my screen. The wonders of
Okay. Today I am with my iPad. That's why. Sorry.
Okay.
No. You answer my question without hearing my question. It's interesting. During the summer, in this seven step of this 7-step model,
of generative change or creative mind, which one?
Yeah, I don't know.
One of them anyway. Okay.
I can't distinguish.
Basically the same model. Yeah, one's got 6 steps and one's got 7. Anyway, go on.
But there is a point. Yeah,
not everybody knows this, so we don't want to. Yeah, so just go on.
There's a point which I usually make a meditation, but it's a sort of mixture between psychological meditation, spiritual meditation, and how you call a relational meditation, when you be aware of your resources. And the second step is when you integrate your obstacle. I think it's a kind of mixture of all the 3 things that you explain. Okay. For me, it's my way. I don't. Yeah.
To some degree, that's correct. We can, but it's really helpful to separate them out. I think it's really helpful to separate them out. So you could start with a generative state, or a body-mind state, a way of getting connected with your body-mind. Getting into this state of meditation, which is really like the awareness practice, including the body. That would be a great place to start. And then if you were doing psychological healing, you might not just have psychological resources like, everybody who's ever loved you, believed in you, and cared about you. All the people who really, really get you, see their face, hear their voice, feel them. So you're seeing them around you. You have a circle of supporters. But that circle of supporters could include, archetypal saints and Buddhas and messiahs and, spiritual figures, spiritual archetypes. So actually, when we are doing psychological resourcing, we can combine, if you like, psychological figures that we have from our life or from the past. We can include people that we have known, but we could also include people, sometimes when I need patience, I call on Nelson Mandela. I've never met Nelson Mandela, but the fact that he was sentenced to 27 years in prison and kept resourceful is a really great reminder for me of patience and resilience and persistence. And then, of course, I can call on an archetypal form, a spiritual form from any one of the traditions. So that's when it all gets combined. But I think it's quite useful to practice them separately, rather than just mushing them all up together. And then, of course, once you've got some experience practicing it separately, then it can all happen within a few minutes. You can do it all together. But they have slightly different purposes. Sometimes they have different purposes. Awareness practice is to learn that you are source, that you are the Buddha, that God is everywhere, including in you, that you are existence, that is you, and so relational meditation is to call on the strength of a higher power to bless you, to give you grace, to do something to you, to support you, to send you energy, to bring you healing. And then the psychological meditation is very specifically to either heal a place in you yourself, or bring you, actually more accurately, to give you the resources to hold the place in you that needs healing. I mean, that's a sort of more accurate description. But that if your heart is really full because you remember every person who ever loved you, ever believed in you, ever cared about you, then if your heart is that full, any wounded place in you can be held by you in a beautiful, comforting way. One of the metaphors that we use is that the idea of the sort of becoming the perfect parent for yourself. There's no parent in the world is perfect, so but we can psychologically have an aspiration to become a really great parent for ourselves, someone who is loving, accepting, guides us, mentors us. And when we've got our psychological resources filling our hearts, we're going to be much better at that than when we're anxious about whatever it is that we get anxious about. Thank you for that. Next question, or comment, or sharing. Anything? What's up with you? What are you thinking?
Julian, I just have a very quick question about falling asleep.
Yes.
Because I fall asleep quite a lot recently when I'm in, like today, and an awful lot of the time. And I was saying in my group, I assume that that's not ideal. Have you got any comments to make about falling asleep?
It's neither ideal or not ideal. So it is so if the meditation practice is about accepting whatever happens, we accept falling asleep. So meditation is about giving up judgments about what's actually happening. Actually, I would say, if you really, really trust awareness, so when you practice meditation for a while, you'll discover that awareness is really trustworthy. And also the body is really trustworthy and is giving you gifts all the time. If the body needs to sleep, then meditation's a great time to do it. I happen to know you have quite a lot of stress in your life at the moment from our email exchange. Therefore, being able to just go into a deep, relaxed, healing state in the present moment is really a beautiful thing for you. So that, these states are healing states. So if what you need in that healing state is to sleep, or if you need a profound, deep state, that's great. Don't worry about it. I mean, there will be an audio from this session, and there will be an audio just of the meditation. So you can repeat that. When I first did guided meditations, I had audios, and it was the old day with a cassette tape. And I used to fall asleep, and then I'd wait with the click at the end of the tape. There was like a click at the end of the old audio tape. And that was great. In fact, I used them to fall asleep at night. What a great way to fall asleep. So it's only if you're sort of saying, I've got to learn how to do this so I can lead other people through it and I can charge them lots of money and sound like an expert, It's actually, if that's what you do, then that's great. So, I invite you to listen to the audios if that's helpful. One of the things that's interesting is I haven't seen this research for a long time, but there was some research quite a few years ago where some anaesthetists played hypnotic suggestion tapes to people under anaesthetic on an operating table about speeding up the healing process. And they said that for those people, the research said that those people who had the hypnotic suggestions about the healing process spent less time in hospital than the people who didn't. You're still hearing it. I have a slight question about this research, because if this research was really validated, all the American health insurance companies would be paying for it. Would be making sure that it was applied, because everybody wants to save money on hospital beds. But the basic idea that you're still getting it even if you're asleep is a really helpful one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Sure. Great question. I'm going to take one more question, and then we're going to do something else before we close. Sally.
Hi, yeah. I'm really interested in this state that you were suggesting when we came out of the meditation, about still being connected to ourselves on the inside, but opening our eyes and connecting to what's happening on the outside. And I remember, that when I was working with the horses and doing equine assisted therapy, that was such a key state that we were all in, working with the horses and working with people. And so, I'd just be really interested to just embody that and learn that more, especially me, because I so easily second position and get distracted by other people. So
so we could talk about generative states, that really to learn to live from generative states, body, mind, connected states of well-being, to learn to live from that. And there's research in the positive psychology that we call a Broaden-Build theory of positive emotion, which says not only does the generative state, the connected state, feel good at the time, but also it improves your decision making, it improves your communication, it improves your sort of scoped risk taking. You don't take too much risk, you don't take too little risk, and therefore it increases your level of success. So those generative states. So the ideal is that we have well-being practices every day that start us off in the day, that help us feel. So that's why we meditate at the beginning of the day, to feel good at the beginning of the day. And also we have other well-being practices: playing tennis, playing squash, listening to music, whatever that lots of that keeps bringing us back to that state of connectedness. And that we have quick and dirty practices where we suddenly think, oh my God, this is a stressful situation, let me take a few deep breaths and use my little meditation technique. Some of you know I take people on meditations with see 4 things, hear 4 things, feel 4 things, see 3 things, hear 3 things, feel 3 things. You have someone else might use a mantra, or someone else might use a prayer, or someone else might have a particular memory of a meditation state that takes them in quickly. So we're going to be at our best when we have body-mind connection. And there are, the idea would be that we could have that in every situation, and that becomes a habit. But it's great to have a meditation practice as a practice for being able to then spread this and have this in more places in our life. When I walk to the tube, it's completely, if I'm late and I'm running and I'm worried about, and I've got anxiety about being late to meet the person, that's totally different to if I'm walking along the road, enjoying the weather, whether it's sun or rain, looking at people's faces, looking at dogs, looking at trees, looking at houses, just enjoying the diversity of life. Then I'm sort of in a blissful state walking to the tube. And then when I get on the tube, if I'm in a relaxed state, I say, look at this bunch of people, we're all sitting here, who's that sitting opposite me? I have to make sure I don't stare too much, because sometimes I'm so interested, that people think, who's this dodgy guy sitting opposite, so I'm sort of a little bit careful about that. So that's the ideal, to have generative states in every moment of our lives. That's the practice. So that's a great way to end the Q&A today. So I'm going to add an extra session. You'll get it in the email on Saturday, to the series. Next week will be sort of embodied awareness before we do the relational meditation. The rest of the program will stay the same. You'll see it in the newsletter, and also you'll see it in the Zoom link that will get sent to you next Wednesday. I'd like you to all unmute your microphones. And we've got a whole 5 minutes here, so we don't have to rush with this. So check into your body. How are you feeling right now? Unmute your microphone if there isn't too much background sound, let's put it that way. Unmute your microphone. How are you feeling right now? And I'd love to hear a word or a phrase from everybody about how you're feeling right now.
Uplifted.
Curious.
If someone speaks over you, just repeat again when there's a gap.
Curious.
Chilled out.
Calm.
Relaxed.
Relaxed.
Calm.
Present.
Perfect.
Connected.
Relaxed.
Tired, and calm.
Connected.
Good.
Tired. Tired.
Connected.
Centered.
Tired and peaceful.
Light. Confident and connected.
Winging.
Say that again, Akim.
Winging.
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 Losing.
Anyone not spoken?
Happy. Alive.
Yeah, just feel this. Can you feel the field? So there's a feeling in the group. So, despite our distribution across space and time, we're connected. And there's a common feeling, which we can call the field.
Fully aware.
Connected.
Those people who said tired, that's just your body saying, hey, I really need, I need more relaxation, I need more rest. I've been busy. I will, just because I've got time, I'm just going to read you, if I can find it. The Guest House by Rumi. This being is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if there are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.
Okay.
And then paying attention to the guest house itself, which is awareness, which is the awareness practice. Not the visitors, but awareness itself. So lovely to be with you this week, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julian.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye bye.